Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Victoria Dickerson, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Caleb Talley and Daniel Koonce. How are you guys?
Doing great. Doing a wonderful day in paradise.
Good. We're glad to be joined by Bonnie Adams. Bonnie is the founder and CEO of The Joys of Swimming, which is an organization that specializes in swimming and water safety education, as well as Swim Oz. It's a U.S. Masters swim team specializing in open water swimming. Bonnie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you too. So go ahead and just tell us the genesis, the origin story of you being here. Start however far back you want to, and how you came to found the Joys of Swimming, Swim Oz.
Okay, I'll try to be somewhat concise because it could wander all over the place. But actually started teaching here in Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas, when I was just 15. Wonderful mentor, Carolyn Hefner, who is still around to this day and still teaches, which blows my mind. She's an incredible woman. I have nicknamed her the grandmother of swimming of Northwest Arkansas. But kind of got a taste for teaching then. Then went on to do private lessons in my parents' backyard. Was one of the coaches for the Walmart Swim Club back in the day.
I remember.
Yeah.
I was on the Walmart Swim Club.
I love it. And then we were a part of the Bentonville High School team that was one of the first state championship swim teams. And then went on to the University of Arkansas on a swimming scholarship. Then met my husband, who's also a swimmer, and we fell in love, got married. He started working for Walmart. That took us to Florida. Coached down in Florida for a while, started having babies. We moved to North Carolina, had another baby, and then the babies started to get a little bit older, which was great. I looked to do a little more than just a few lessons here and there, and went on to work at Duke University as their aquatics director for about 5 years. And that's really when the idea of the Joys of Swimming got started. Had to resign from that position. Husband took another role and was traveling a lot, and 3 girls and activities and things. Basically, I was a single parent at that point as far as evening rounds and all the extracurriculars were concerned. So had to take a step back, but got started in our neighborhood pool and was just doing private lessons, and then grew to doing some parent and tots and some clinics. Was like, okay, this is kind of a thing. And that's kind of where the Joys of Swimming actually started. Logo, name, Facebook page, all that kind of fun stuff that is really kind of the roots of what we are today. Fast forward a little bit, moved to Bentonville, was the aquatics director for the city of Bentonville for about a year and a half, and then was able to take a little bit of a step back and kind of take things in, new place, kids growing, traveling, all of the fun things. And was able to work for Bike NWA for a little bit. And one of the things that we did with Bike NWA, and this will kind of come full circle here in a few minutes, but we did pedestrian safety and in the schools and in businesses. And I really enjoyed that. And it was something that I had done previously with the Joys of Swimming in North Carolina, but it was more of a self-fulfilling piece of marketing for my own swim school, which made a lot of sense. But anyway, fast forward a smidge, we had a facility in Bentonville, and we grew from myself being the only instructor to a team of 20 instructors. Wow. We had about 300 families that were utilizing our services for primarily private lessons. About 80% of our clientele was private lessons. And then we did a handful of parent and taught. We did some Swim Team 101, lots of swim clinics. My own personal clients were a lot of triathletes and a handful of adults that were just learning to swim, just for the enjoyment, for the safety of it, for the exercise of it, all those kinds of amazing things that swimming can provide. And we were able to kind of continue to grow year over year, survived COVID, which was amazing. And then unfortunately, in the summer of 21, the building owner decided that he did not want to be a pool owner anymore. And so unfortunately, that meant we had to close our doors. And building a pool is not an inexpensive thing. And so had to kind of shelf the Joys of Swimming for about a year and a half and try to figure out what we wanted to do do, how to do it, all of those kinds of fun things. Worked with the Small Business Association. They're amazing. We fleshed out several different business plans, trying to figure out which made the most sense as a hopefully soon to be retiring woman. I'm definitely not in my late 20s or early 30s anymore. And so just really kind of trying to figure out what not only was best and what would be successful, but what was best for myself and my family in the stage that we're in. And we were able to kind of continue Swim Oz. So Swim Oz got started while we still had the pool with the Joys of Swimming. And we had all these triathletes, all these adults. We were going out to the lake at that point, and it was kind of one of those things that's like, well, there's 10% of our clientele are these adult athletes, right? And the other 90% are parents of 2 to 6 year olds. Yeah. It's like, they don't want to see imagery of, these 40 somethings out at the lake swimming. Like, that's not the swim school I want to take my 2-year-old to. So, decided at that point that there really needed to be a separation, that there really were 2 entities here that we could develop and grow. And so that's where Swim Oz came in, and have had the, fortunate experience to work with Runway and have an Oz license through them. And so we get to use the beautiful colors, a little bit of the name recognition, at least for the local folks, and started the Swim Oz Masters team. Cool. And so we go out to Beaver Lake roughly in April is when we start. You have to know me. I have to know your swimming abilities in order for you to join us in April, because it's cold. It is cold. But for the majority of everyone else, May is when we really officially start on our regular Wednesday nights. And we're out at the Highway 12 boat ramp, and we set up a nice little course, roughly 700 yards. We set up sighting buoys. I provide volunteers and kayaks and paddleboarders, and allow our swimmers to hop in. And some will do 1 lap. Most will do 2, which puts you right about a mile. And then we've got some really fast folks that'll do 2 or 3 miles in that 1 hour time frame. That's so amazing. It's really fun to see. It's amazing for me to see the diversity of the swimmer that shows up. We've got folks that are like, this open water thing sounds really interesting, but they know nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing about it. And then we've got Division I champions. We had Olympians last year that joined us. So like, it's really neat to see the diversity of the swimmer, but also to build the community of brand new swimmers to these Olympian 10Kers that are like, yeah, let me show you this trick, or hey, this is the question I have. Does anybody know how to address it? And it's really been really an amazing experience. I'm all about building community, and so it's been really neat to have that, be able to grow that aspect of it. Circle back to the joys of swimming. I haven't forgotten. So I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I've done is providing safety education, and so that's kind of where we've picked back up with the joys of swimming. Last December, I guess it would have been December 22, sat down with a good friend of mine who has a wealth of knowledge and background in strategic planning and mission statements and vision and all of that amazing stuff that you really have to have in order to be successful, and was able to sit down and really kind of redirect what we wanted to do with the joys of swimming. And so now we go into schools and we partner with area businesses that provide this service to the school at no charge to the school. Cool. And so last year we saw roughly 15,000 students in the Northwest Arkansas area, and look to grow that exponentially. And would really love to be in every school for obvious reasons. This is life-saving education, and it's really interesting how, there's so many amazing parts of swimming. You know this more than most.
Yes, I'll just for listeners, I was a swimmer for about 12 years. Both Bonnie was my coach when I was at Walmart Swim Club and the Northwest Arkansas Sharks, and my mom, Lisa Richards, was also my swim coach. So I have a background in swimming. I know Bonnie, which is why I'm especially excited to have her on the show today. So sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, that's perfect. That's perfect. But there's so much benefit from swimming. Yes, it's a sport. Yes, it's athletic. Those are wonderful pieces of it. But the pieces that you learn, packing your swim bag, going to a swim meet, preparing your nutrition, all of those things are just really amazing. And then you add on the fact that it can save your life and potentially the lives of others is just huge. And it's really an interesting piece. States are starting to kind of be aware of this. Recently, probably within the last 6 or 7 years, I believe, Florida finally passed legislation. So think of the shape of Florida. It's surrounded by water on 3 sides.
Yep.
Like, come on, guys. And it's covered in lakes. So water is pretty much everywhere in Florida. And they only just recently passed legislation that says we need to be teaching swimming in our schools, in the curriculum. Yeah. And so Arkansas is taking notice. Last year, we passed an act that is a start as far as I'm concerned. It's a step in the right direction, doesn't do very much, but it at least is putting water safety on the radar. And basically what the act states is that the schools must provide access to water safety education. So it could be as simple as a link on their website. It could be in the stack of 80 million pieces of paper you get the first day of school. It could be that simple. My hope is that a lot of the schools take notice of this and hopefully will want to go above board and really present curriculum that is life-saving, which is what the Joys of Swimming has done.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that was a lot.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. There's just so
apologize
much
at
to
all.
unpack. So I appreciate you giving us so much to go off of. So talk a little bit more about when you go into the schools, what has the response been for the families that either have had no water education in their family or they already come from a background, or even the educators or the administration? What has the response been when you're in the schools?
That's a great question. And there's a couple of pieces that I'll hit on that. So when I go into the schools, we do it by grades. One of the things that I pride our presentations in is, call it accountability, but basically it's that eye contact. And about 100 is the max that you can do as a presenter and still make sure that you're connecting with your audience. And that is something that I want to make sure that we hold on to and make sure that we are really getting into the minds of these young kids and they're absorbing this information. So I'll present a little bit. It's a lot back and forth. So I'm asking these kids questions. We're talking about what is a body of water, and I want them to respond. And then we go over 4 safety questions, and I want them, it's a yell contest by the time we're done with it. And I'm making sure that everybody's lips are moving in the appropriate way and the appropriate words are coming out, all of that fun stuff. So it's very, very interactive. So there's that piece of it. Kids are having fun. PE teachers typically is who I work with in regards to doing the presentations. Makes it a lot easier grade-wise and just kind of all the logistics that are behind the scenes. But the kids will absorb that information. They hear it, they're saying it, then they get a take-home sheet. And this is where our business partners kind of come in and get a little recognition for what they're doing. And so we've got this take-home sheet. We do a really fun color sheet on one side. On the back side are these 4 questions that we've just drilled into these kids. And there's a little strip at the end that says, I've taken this information, I've shared it with everyone that lives in my house, and parents sign it as well. So by that, we're not only getting in with the kids, we're then getting in with hopefully brothers and sisters and mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, those kinds of things. Then the kids bring this little strip back, and then they get to sign a banner that lives at the school.
Cool.
And so the kids get this, kind of cool feeling of, okay, I did this thing. And it's really a neat interactive piece. And then it's got a bunch of touch points, right? We're hitting the kids that are auditory learners. We're hitting the kids that are visual learners. We're getting the kids to recite that information again and again. And then they're seeing it again and again. So it's really a great method for those pieces, those 4 topics to really hit home and get to a point where you don't have to think about those questions when the incident actually happens. And I'll I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give you those 4 questions.
I was actually going to ask, yeah.
I figured. Do we walk or run around bodies of water? We want to walk. And of course, in every group, somebody's going to say no. It's like, wait, no, you got to listen to the question. And then we ask them, should you ever swim alone? Answer is no. And then I kind of will go off on tangents depending upon how old the group is that I'm working with. And we'll talk about like Michael Phelps and a swim coach or me or their mom. Should they ever swim alone? And no is the right answer. And we're talking about, depending upon, again, the age of the group. Kindergartners, we're not going to go into too much detail. My high school kids, we're going to go into some detail here. And it's, you're swimming along and you bump your head. I'm a backstroker. I've bumped my head a fair number of times. I blame chlorine on a lot, and that's probably one of the things. But you just don't know when an incident's going to occur, and you've just got to have that safety layer, right? And then this is really where that ultimately that life-saving piece is going to come into play is what should you do if you ever see someone in the water and they're having trouble? And I love to hear the response from the audience. And so we'll, raise your hand and I'll call in a handful of folks. Some of them will have an idea. And a lot of them want to go help them. It's like, well, what's the best way to go help them? And we want them to go tell a grown up. And then again, depending upon the age of the audience, it's, even lifeguards go and tell somebody before they get in. Think about when you're on the pool deck or you're at a city pool or somewhere where there are lifeguards, you hear whistles and then you see action. And that whistle system, right, is the lifeguard's way of telling an adult. And so we discuss that. And then the other piece is what should you do if you're the one in the water having trouble? And we want to float on our back and yell for help. And obviously, I can't drag a body of water around with me. And unfortunately, in Northwest Arkansas, there are not very many bodies of water. So we improvise. And because this is a PE class, I have a little freedom to do some movement. And we will take over the entire gym floor. And I will lay these kids down. And we talk about what floating on your back is. And ultimately, a lot of kids are like, oh, it's just laying there doing nothing. And it's like, well, not quite. It's doing as little as possible. And that's like a really big mind shift for a lot of these kids. And so we'll, talk about engaging your core and trying to lift your feet just a little bit off the ground and pushing down with your hands and all of these things that you can take and do in the water that facilitate being able to float on your back for a longer period of time with as little input and energy as possible. So it's really a neat thing. I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited about it.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
That's really inspiring.
And you talked about, kind of not knowing what backgrounds a lot of these kids have going into this. And I could just say anecdotally, my mom never learned to swim. And so it was important for me to learn how to swim. But there was still, and then we had a couple of family members that have passed away from drowning. And so there's still this like apprehension to approaching bodies of water or swimming. And there's just kind of that's just kind of almost ingrained, almost creates a fear, I think, from my mom's perspective of like shielding us from water to an extent to where, if for a student like that might have a background like that's introduction to education or, preventative measures that they might not ever have, rather than what I'm basically trying to say, avoidance isn't the answer.
Exactly. You're going to come across a river, a stream. Yeah. You're going to come across body of water.
Yeah. So avoidance is not the answer. So approaching it from that perspective, I think, is important, and it's refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
That wasn't a question.
No, it's good. And back to who that audience is. I'll have them raise their hands. Who here's gone swimming, right? Who here has a neighborhood pool or goes to the pool regularly? Who's been to the beach? Who's had swim lessons? And then those hands start dropping. I'm surprised if I have more than 20% of the kids that actually raise their hand for swim lessons, and that. To me, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. I mean, this is a life skill. How many families, how many people do you know that go to their beach at some point in time in their life for a vacation? Pretty much everybody's going to go to a body of water for vacation or a day off. They're going to the community pool or what have you. And they've never had swim lessons before. Yeah. I was chatting with a gentleman just yesterday morning, actually. He grew up swimming and was a lifeguard and has done, I don't know how many half and full Ironmans. He's an accomplished athlete, great swimmer. And he was telling me about his years as a camp counselor. And every first day of camp, they start with the swim test, right? And go out, do you know how to swim? He'd ask the kids. And they would say yes. They would jump in, and probably more than half of them he would have to pull out of the water, even though they just said that they know how to swim. And there's that idea of the definition of what swimming is. And if we all wrote down what swimming is, we're probably going to be a different answer from each of us. And it's not backyard pool. It's not city pool. It's not pond. It's, can you swim 300 or 500 yards? So think for a second what a football field is, right? That's 100 yards. Can you swim that 3 times and be ready for more? And that's the piece that I think a lot of people forget about, is that ready for more. If you can't do that, you need to be wearing a life jacket every time you're around a body of water.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. So yeah. Anyway,
I need to invest in life jackets.
Or
The answer to that is absolutely not. So, Bonnie, I was thinking about, I feel like we'd met before I started Startup Junkie, and was thinking back, you had participated in a startup weekend back when I was in the journalism realm, and I was covering that startup weekend before I started Startup Junkie. So I'm curious to get your perspective on that as an experience, and just also the role, I guess, the Northwest Arkansas entrepreneurial community ecosystem has played in kind of your journey as well.
Yeah. So remind me to get to the journey part if I go off too much of a tangent. But yeah, so that was, oh my gosh, maybe
It would have been 2018 or 19.
I feel like. So one of the safety pieces for yourself, right? What should you do if you're the one in the water having trouble? Audience, anybody? What should we do if you're having trouble?
Go on to your back and float.
Go on your back.
Call for help.
Exactly. Yay. You guys get gold stars. So we want everybody to be able to float on their back. And as a small child, as an infant, when you are laying there on your back, you are exposed. There's a lot of vulnerability that's happening. Water's getting in your ears. You can't see behind you. Like, there's just a lot of challenge there. And there's things as an instructor, I've been teaching for 30 years. I have a lot of tricks and tips that I share with my instructors and that sort of thing in regards to making the child feel more comfortable, making the adult feel more comfortable. But at the end of the day, it's still hard. And, look up wherever you are, look up. There's not going to be a whole lot of interesting things unless you're fortunate enough to be outside. But even today, it's pure blue sky. So there's not a whole lot to distract you. So I decided to, we called it the Rainbow Reef, and we made a floating half tunnel. And basically the idea is to get the child to rest their head on the instructor's shoulder or parent's shoulder, and then to go through this tunnel. And we used fabric, but the idea is that you could have any kind of design. And with our fabric, I think we had animals maybe. And so it was like, can you see the lion? Where's the lion? What sounds does the lion make? So you're thinking about all these other things. And then, oh, by the way, we're sneaking in some water safety exposure. And it was really cool to see. And we even put it into place. We went out to the pool and gave it some test runs and that kind of thing. And it was really a neat experience. It was amazing to see all the different types of builders and creators that came for that weekend. I think there were probably maybe a dozen different, entities that were there and participated. And things such as the Rainbow Reef, working on, basically at home water education. And then there were like puzzle things,
robots and
all
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
And all kinds of things. And it was really neat. And it was cool to see Northwest Arkansas come out and support support of something like that. And, there were attorneys that came and volunteered their time, and all sorts of encouragement and knowledge sharing and growth. And I'd never used a 3D printer before. We got to use a 3D printer. It was so cool. And just that, having that exposure to, this is something that could be done if. And that was really a cool experience. It was really neat.
And then going back to that journey as far as the ecosystem.
I knew I'd forget.
Kind of as an entrepreneur, the role, I know you've didn't necessarily start here in Northwest Arkansas, having been involved in kind of your own thing in other states, but kind of the role of the Northwest Arkansas ecosystem on kind of part of your journey.
Yeah, there's an incredible ecosystem. It is things, even just the podcast that you guys produce is incredible, and a wealth of stories and knowledge there is really a lot of fun. I haven't listened to all of them.
Me neither,
that makes me feel so much better. But there's just that piece. So you can be a fly on the wall and just kind of observe and learn. You can be involved in the 1 million cups. I feel like I've been going to 1 million cups off and on since you guys started the chapter here. And that has been fascinating to see not only the different entrepreneurial journeys. I feel like we've done a lot of baking things lately, which has been kind of fun. But then there's a high school kid that did an app that detects tuberculosis. Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Bentonville high school student.
Yeah, that blows my mind. And to see and hear just a smidge of his story and the support that he's gotten from the different areas, whether it be the high school or with the MBA program through the University of Arkansas, some of the support that is fostered there, the collaborative where we actually have 1 million cups. All of that stuff is just, it's really incredible. I mentioned a little bit ago in regards to the joys of swimming, and we, kind of paused things until I could figure stuff out. And the meetings that I had there were incredible, were very, very valuable. And it was not just sit down and write a business plan. It was so much more than that. And it was here's this tract. And then let's see what happens if we merge the two or we separate even further. And to have that guidance and the ability to have gone further with that was really eye-opening and extremely educational. And I feel like you can do just about anything here, and there is support somewhere. And it may not be, okay, you're the one that's going to support me with this, but you're going to put me in contact with who is. And then that person's going to put me in contact with somebody else that I didn't even know I was having a challenge with this particular part or what have you. Yeah. But it's really incredible. And what a tight knit space this really is.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that, because that's something that I see at Startup Junkie events, but also just events in Northwest Arkansas. In the system is that there's genuinely a feeling of support, and we want to see other people succeed. And I think that's just the Northwest Arkansas spirit, that even if I'm not the perfect connection for you, but I might know someone who knows someone, and I'm more than willing to connect you to. And so I love that you mentioned 1 million cups, because that is something that Startup Junkie puts on, but it's also something I'm passionate about, because I see people, whether they're in the middle of their entrepreneur journey, towards the end of it, or they're just starting, that they come and they always meet somebody that they didn't even know that they needed to talk to. And so that's just something that I always encourage people to get out and come to, not only Startup Junkie events, because I love them, but just any event in Northwest Arkansas, because that really is the culture of the people here, that we want to see people succeed. And so who are some people that you can think of in your journey that were those key connectors for you?
Oh, wow. I feel I'm a little on the spot. I don't know.
Probably a lot.
That's just
you mentioned Carolyn Hefner.
Carolyn Hefner's incredible. I would definitely not be where I am without her. Through the course of, oh my gosh, 3 decades, she's been in my, I feel like, back pocket. Like I could call her and talk to her about anything at any point in my swimming journey, my coaching journey, and my teaching journey. She's been incredible. I don't think I ever would have gotten started way back when I was in high school myself without the encouragement of my parents. This is this thing that you can go do. And as soon as I started, it was fun. And I pretty much never looked back. I think from a networking standpoint and an event standpoint, I go to events with two things in mind. One, what am I going to learn? I'm a lifelong learner. I love to hear stories. That really gets me going. And then the other piece is who might I meet? And it's the who I might meet has a couple of different hats, I feel like. One, are they a potential client? Awesome. Financial things help.
Absolutely.
So it makes the world go around. But also, who, to your point, who might I meet that can put me in touch with? And that's really it's a unique thing that Northwest Arkansas has such support for that. I've been in a lot of places, and a lot of places are, sure, come to these events, but I'm not giving you my Rolodex. I'm not going to put you in touch with that person. Yeah. I don't know that they've got time for you and me. And so there's a lot of that protection and it's a shame when that happens. There's so much to go around. There's so much to go around, whether it's events or networking or ideas or any of that kind of stuff. And we're in a blessed place. I'm sure everybody else here calls it the same, but it's a bubble. We are in a very special place. And it's amazing that we get to live here and do life here and learn from each other, and things that are hard for somebody might not be hard for me, but I'm still going to learn something about that particular challenge or struggle that they've had. And my hope here, like going into the depths of how we got started and where we are now, I mean, it's different. It's real different. I still do private lessons. I still have that little bucket. That feeds my soul. I love taking a swimmer or non-swimmer and exposing them to not only the joys of swimming. We were called that. I named it that for a reason. But also to expose them to just a different form of exercise, a different idea and aspect. Take triathletes, for example. A lot of them are cyclists or runners, right? Especially in this area, we have a ton of cyclists that are like, okay, well, I can do this, so I can run a little. Sure, I'll do a triathlon, and then they're going, crap, the swim. And the swimming for a lot of folks is their least favorite, their most apprehensive, their biggest challenge. And to take those clients and for them to get out of the water going, that was a great warm up. That was my favorite part. I have one gal that so one of the things Swim Oz does, we put on the Oz Mile Swim that happens the last full weekend in September. And it's a whole open water festival weekend, basically. And we do a 1 mile swim out at Beaver Lake Dam, and it's gorgeous. And we need volunteers if you don't think you can do a mile. But she came to us in the early stages of the summer and did our weekly swims out at Beaver Lake. And it was not her favorite thing. She was very upfront. I'm doing this because I signed up for a half Ironman, and I'm doing this because I have to do this. And she was our first registration for the Oz Mile 24. Cool. And I reached out to her, and she's like, it was my favorite event of all of the events in 23. Wow. And I was like, that's amazing. And she's like, yeah. And I got out of the swim at the half, and it was great. And it just, that makes me so happy.
That's the best.
It is the best. Yeah.
Well, you talked about the encouragement of your parents and how important that was to you. It's easy to say we need higher safety education for swimming. Was there a specific moment in time where you realized that could be an actual feasible business? And how did it really just turn into joys of swimming?
Great question. So, I think part of being a small business owner or an entrepreneur, one and the same really, is identifying the fact that, one, you're going to have to wear all the hats, janitor, pool mechanic, all the hats, as well as being able to pivot. And, we had the unfortunate news that our facility was shutting down, and it took some time. It was about a year and a half before I really figured out what this was going to look like and how that pivot was going to shift. And, family plays an important role. And this particular stage really came with encouragement and support from my husband. And he, lifelong swimmer himself. That's actually where we met, was in a swimming pool.
Romantic.
Yeah, it's a story for another day. But he saw the value in what I was doing. And I had a really hard time with that shift of providing this free service, because that's what I had been doing. So it was a marketing tool for myself, for my swim school, that I would go into 2 or 3 schools that I knew were the areas that I wanted to get involved in, and make those families be aware of the fact that, hey, there's a swim school down the street. And so that was the initial why we did the water safety stuff. One, I want everybody in the whole wide world to know the answer to those 4 questions. That's my ultimate goal. But in the meantime, it was a really, in my mind, a great marketing, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but tool. It was a marketing tool that we were able to utilize for the swim school. And it was my husband's support of saying, your time is valuable. You need to look at what this is, what you've created, the curriculum that has been created and curated. And like, there's pieces of that are very purposeful and thoughtful behind. I'm not just going to get up and present this information and give them a take-home sheet. Like, that's not enough. That's not going to be absorptive to them. I think probably one of the highlights was I was in a waiting room, and there was a little family in the waiting room as well. And the dad or mom was, asking them questions about different things. And then the kids started talking about water safety. And it was a kid that I had presented to beforehand. Cool. Total fly on the wall. And I'm sure the parents were like, quit staring at us. But I was like totally geeking out over the fact that this little, 6 or 7-year-old was giving the parents and the older sibling the 4 questions and the whys behind it. It was really cool.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Cool.
That's a really cool story. So I really love that you talked about, using your education as a marketing tool, because that is something that I always talk to business owners about, that the best thing, they always are wondering, what do I post on my social media? If I want to write a blog, how do I get started? That the number one thing is just education. That's free content that you already know. You're establishing yourself as the expert. You're providing a free resource for people, but also providing opportunities like that to, get into the schools and then also bolster your business. And so education and marketing, I think, go hand in hand. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And just to kind of wrap up this wonderful conversation that we've had, the last question we always ask is, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self, however far back you want that to be, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, wow. So probably when I first started the Joys of Swimming, embracing and knowing that I know my stuff, and owning that part. There's, I think there's a pride factor that gets in the way sometimes of the opposite way, right? You've got folks that think they know it all and are going to tell you they know it all. And then you've got folks that actually do know it all and are going to be really kind of off to the side. Yeah, I kind of know my stuff. And that took me quite a while to be like, no, I know this.
Yeah.
I am an expert in water safety. I am an expert in learn to swim and swim efficiency and open water swimming. And that part, like, I would consider myself to have been confident, but not like owning it and like, yeah, this is what we are and what we're doing. And so I think taking some time to analyze what you're doing and what information you're sharing and putting out there, especially, I mean, this is obviously an educational piece, But I think you can translate that to any type of entrepreneurial journey, and taking a moment, taking a day, taking a week, and being like, I know this better than anybody else. And even, okay, you don't know it better than anybody else. At what level can you rise to have that full confidence behind you? And I think that would have changed some things maybe.
In our actual last question, but not our actual last question. Do you really have 14 puppies?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes. So we have a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. Her name is Whiskey.
Awesome.
Full name Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Yes, WTF. We got her and then put money down on the puppies and then found out we were moving to Northwest Arkansas, and we already had 2 dogs, 2 cats, a bird, 2 fish, 3 turtles, and it was WTF are we going to do about this?
Oh my gosh.
And so Whiskey Tango Foxtrot it was. Fast forward, we did know that we wanted to breed her. And so when we did, she gifted us with 14 puppies.
When was that?
This
was
was 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. So
they'll be
they're
5
all,
in
okay,
May.
wow.
And they're all still happy and healthy and wonderful. We kept one, Bourbon, Whiskey Special Reserve. And and they're amazing.
Do you want a mini pig?
No, but I would love to come visit.
Okay.
Caleb has a mini pig.
Yeah, I
for our
recently got a mini
listeners.
pig, so if you're in the market. But our actual last question is for our audience that want to know more, that want to connect with you, want to plug in with some of the stuff you're doing. What is the best way for them to reach you, learn more?
Absolutely. So our website, thejoysofswimming.com. The Joys. There are many joys of swimming. So joys with an S of swimming.com. And we're on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And then we also have our Swim Oz stuff. It lives on the Joys of Swimming website, but it does have its own identity for social media stuff. And then one thing that we didn't talk about, but I'm going to be starting my own podcast. I'm very excited about this. It's called The Tributary. And basically it's water related in some way, shape, or form. And
solid name. That's
yeah,
a great name.
Thanks. And so that's going to be kicking off the ground. It'll have a page on the Joys of Swimming website as well. But I literally, before I came in here, created our Facebook page and an Instagram page. So go follow us. Stay tuned for that. But lots of outdoor recreation, education, and information. One of the things that we do, you get into podcasts and you always have a question at the end or things like that. And one of the things that we're doing with the Tributary is having a water safety piece every time. So the first one we recorded was really a lot about community, and not just the swimming community, but just communities in general. I had the pleasure of chatting with Kyla Templeton, who's done Bike School Bentonville and Arkansas NICA. And so it was a lot of community building. And so we talked about making sure that you never swim alone. So you always have a little instant community there with you. So can look forward to things like that. But thejoysofswimming.com has it all and has all my contact information. So if you'd like to sponsor a school or a business, anything of that sort. We always need that kind of exposure and assistance. So please reach out.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for being on the show, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.